Thank you, Susan. Again, I'm Karen Sigg. I work with Recycling Connections. And as Susan mentioned, we have been working with Marathon County Solid Waste Department for a long time. And Marathon County Solid Waste Department likes to have a little tongue in cheek on things. And I have these t-shirts. We'll, in case you can't read it but or see it well, we'll tell you where to put it. Yeah, so it is an official t-shirt. Don't mean to be offensive on it. And Marathon County Solid Waste Department, Portage County Solid Waste Department, and Recycling Connections have formed a partnership called the Central Wisconsin Recycling Collective. And we really want, with this partnership, to educate folks about what to recycle, how to recycle, and we're really working towards having a quality recycling stream. And that is really important so that we're giving good materials to the markets that purchase this material and that they can make new things from it well. So that's what we're going to kind of go over, is like what to put in and what not to. And yet some of those things are not go into your bin, but we're going to go, I'm going to cover where and how you can recycle them separately and maybe in other kind of programs. So I am going to start, and I have a number of props. So I'm going to zoom behind my two people here. And to start, we're going to go over what typically goes in a bin in central Wisconsin. This is also fairly typical other locations, but I always emphasize, make sure that you check what your local program is accepting so that you really know for sure. So again, I'm going to go over what pretty much all of Marathon and Portage County accept, but please make sure that you're always getting your local current information. And also, we'll go over this number at the end, but if you have any questions later about from where you live and that, you can still call our 877 number and learn more. So,
hey Karen, just before you get started, the chair is just in the way of your sign, so you just can't see it. So if you just move it to the side, they'll be able to see those special categories you have.
There, thank you, Susan. I didn't normally have the chair there. So, okay, now we have our categories. Okay, so things that typically go in a bin, your papers, and this could be like your various kind of mail, newsprint, and magazines, catalogs, and various kinds of flattened cardboard, whether it's from, like here's the Kleenexes or from cereal or food boxes, and corrugated cardboard. Now, I want you to notice that these are all flat. That is really important when you put your things into your bin, especially the cardboard, because when it gets at the material recovery facility to be sorted, there's a lot of different pieces of equipment that will do that. And it's always for the paper, to get the paper away from the containers at our particular MRF that services central Wisconsin. It's a single stream. You can mix all this together. And so when they're flattened, the papers get shook and go to one side, and the three-dimensional items will go to another side. So please make sure that your boxes are flattened so they truly will be recycled properly at the recycling facility. We also take glass, bottle glass, so different colors. So those are things that can go into your bin. Just make sure that they're rinsed, basically, just no food residue inside there. We take aluminum cans, and now here's a case of where, similar to the like the papers, we want them to be just the opposite. Please, no hockey pucks. Don't squish these, because then they're going to probably go in with the paper because they're going to be so flat. So leave them unsquished. And that also goes for your steel cans. And if you have steel lids, this steel lid is going to almost look like paper. It's going to be really flat. It's very two-dimensional. And so if you want this to get recycled with your other kinds of cans, then you need to put it inside a can and kind of crimp that so those flattened lids don't fall out, right? And then for the plastics, we get a lot of questions about plastics. Mostly it's containers that are 1s and 2s are required in Wisconsin. So you look in the bottom, you'll see the numbers. Number 1s are typically drink type bottles. maybe some kinds of oils, like from vegetable oil. The number twos could be like buckets from ice cream pails, or maybe cottage cheese type containers. And here is another example of when you have a container and you have these flat little lids. If they're not attached to the container, they're going to either fall through the equipment or end up getting mixed in with the paper, which is a contaminant on that side. So please, you can put extra lids inside and put this on, but then put that in like that. Yogurt containers. These we can recycle as well, but this type has that foil lid on it. This one, we do not want that foil lid. You take that off, and then that's going to end up going over to the garbage side. So that is something we cannot recycle. But then again, the yogurt container is recyclable. Sometimes I get questions about like how to or what to do with medication bottles. One rule is for things that even no matter what the number is on the bottom, if it is smaller than about the size of your fist, please don't put that in your curbside recycling, even if it is a number 2, for example, or number 1. Those very small things will, again, fall through the equipment and not really end up in the recycling stream. And so we really don't want those really small things. This particular one is large enough that it could fit, but anything, again, more or less smaller than your fist, please don't put that in. So these things, again, are things that you could put in your bin and your curb. And again, making sure they're clean. And I'm just going to get these away because we've kind of covered what can go in your bin at this point. And this is, again, for your curbside collection. All right. So I wanted to at least go over this, but we're going to spend more time going over some of these other things that we don't want to go into your bin. All right, I'm going to set this to the side. And actually, I'm going to remove this because now we're going to be onto some special collections. There are a lot of things that you can still recycle, but again, we don't want them in your bin. And this is a confusing thing. People have good intentions and they want to recycle a lot of things. And so they'll hear about things and they think, oh, well, if it's going to be recycled, they take it away at the curb. These items are ones that you need to collect, save separately, and take them to a different location. So one thing we have is, for example, hard-covered books. We get a question about this, and generally, if you cannot find a place that will reuse them, such as, let's say, a Goodwill or some used bookstore or some kind of nonprofit that might have book sales, etc. If you want to recycle them, you're going to probably, in central Wisconsin, there's one location where you can take them to. That is called IRO in Mosinee. As with COVID, I always encourage people to call these locations beforehand to just verify their hours or procedures, but they can be recycled if you bring them to that location. At this point, I don't believe there's any charge, but again, it's something that we cannot recycle in the curb or your curbside recycling. It needs to be taken someplace else for recycling, reuse, which is also very, very good. And then if you cannot find those kind of other options, then it would become go into the garbage. So hard-covered books are something to recycle in a separate way. We also get a lot of questions about scrap metal. And now, in this case, I showed in the curbside recycling where you can put your steel food cans. But some of these other items are just, again, not designed to go through the equipment and are just should be handled differently. It's despite the plastic on here, wires and like Christmas lights and all that, those do have the wire inside and they can be recycled at different places. Some of the typical ones might be some scrap yards that take in scrap metal. there are different locations. Let's say I know of in the Wausau area, there's Jaegers in Schofield. In the Stevens Point area, there is Express Recycling on Water Street near the brewery. So you can save these and bring those to someplace else for recycling. If they do happen to get into the system going to the MRF, all they do is just get tangled in with all the equipment, and they cannot be sorted well and truly get recycled. So please do not put any kind of wire, whether it's cords or Christmas lights or any kind of that type of coated wire in with your curbside. Save it for another collection. Also at the scrap yards, you can often take just various odd pieces of metal, scrap metal. And these odd shaped things, again, are really horrible to go into the MRF system. So please save those, take those to that scrap yard. Sometimes I've seen people also just put things out, on the curb, and people will pick it up. But again, just all this odds and ends, save it and bring it to that kind of location. Oh, here I just had a little metal cup as well. I save like pots and pans. That's another question I get at the information line that we staff. So those two would be probably something that you could bring to a scrapyard. Another item that, I'll just bring my box right on up here because now I've got plastic bags are another really bad thing that we do not want to go into the curbside collection. This even goes for how you prepare and put your recyclables out at the curb. We really ask people to not put them in a plastic bag and tie it shut and put it into their cart, because those, we have no equipment really, and people cannot open those bags and get those recyclables out. We want them all loose so that they just kind of roll along and the equipment efficiently sorts them out, from the papers to this side to the containers on that side. So if you in your house happen to just keep a plastic bag, let's say lined in your, let's say a waste basket in the house, and then you want to take it out to the cart, please just shake all those recyclables out of that plastic bag. Maybe reuse the bag again to line your container inside the house. But please do not use a plastic bag to collect and store your recyclables when you put them in the cart. Now, if you collect all kinds of other plastic film and bags, this is like from potatoes, I've got from eggs, from toilet paper and paper toweling, all these kinds of, and for shopping bags, these can be recycled, but they need to be taken to, again, a place that will accept them, such as a lot of the retail stores are getting back to accepting them. I know with COVID, there were sometimes some stores were not accepting these, but more and more they are. I know, I believe still Walmart's now do, Lowe's, etc. So just again, checking with them. And sometimes if you just even ask, then you can verify that. I've also seen if the container gets full at a location, and I've got maybe quite a big bag, I just ask an employee and tell them, like, I have a bag that's larger than, I don't want to overstuff your container. And they'll usually are really pretty gracious about helping collect that and just putting it aside so that you just don't overstuff their container. But please, again, any of this plastic film, if you if it's clean and dry, you can recycle it at these different locations. And if it's just messy with food and gunk or whichever, then just throw it away. Just put it in the garbage. It's okay. We would rather you we have this other saying, when in doubt, throw it out. We really are trying to have a clean stream of recyclables. And so that otherwise we are what we also call wish cycling. And we're trying to do our good thing, but we're only making it worse if we're putting in things that are dirty, contaminated, or just not acceptable. So this would be a special item for recycling someplace else. Another special item that do not put in your curbside are fluorescent bulbs. We've got the little curly Q compact fluorescents, or CFLs. This is a small little tube, but you know, you can have the 4-foot or 8-foot tubes. These are recyclable, but again, taken to some place that will take them. Some of the solid waste departments, both Portage and Marathon County solid waste departments, take them at their locations. Other retail places that you could bring them to, I am aware of a company called Batteries Plus Bulbs. And it's a store that sells batteries and bulbs, but they also take them for recycling. And all locations usually charge some kind of a fee. So it's fairly small, but we really encourage you to recycle them if you can and would please, because they do contain a small amount of mercury vapor in there. And just collectively that can add up, and not wanting to release that. So if they go to a recycling process, then that can be handled more properly. If one does happen to break, just clean it up carefully and put it in your trash, and make sure you get all the parts. And if it, but they can be recycled if they go to the right location, and there is a small fee typically. Another thing that, since I mentioned batteries. These days, there are a lot of different batteries out there, and many of them actually can be recycled, that especially the rechargeable type. So whether here's a very small but NiCad type battery, this is like plugged into our cordless phone, many things. These ones have been around for quite a long time, but again, once it's just not holding a charge anymore, the Batteries Plus Bulbs will take them. And again, the solid waste departments will take them. I don't believe there's usually any charge. Best Buy are another kind of retail that will take these type of items, I believe. So again, double check, but there are private sector retail options for bringing these to, and maybe they take, again, a variety of batteries. So checking into those, whether could be like the little button batteries. Sometimes it's take alkaline batteries. Those, there may be a fee. So if possible, to not, again, put those in your garbage and then to recycle them. Another type of battery that's becoming more of a concern in the big picture are these lithium ion type batteries that are used in, well, let's say cell phones, computers, and sometimes the real tiny ones, they make them super tiny to be inside, let's say like the vaping devices or all type of little, whenever you get something that has like a little switch to make a little light, there's probably just a little tiny little lithium in there, battery. These are becoming a concern because, well, for on airplanes, they're very, can be, let's say, volatile, more volatile, and can have sort of a spontaneous combustion. And so maybe you've heard, like, you cannot take these or ship these in, let's say, on airplanes. For us in the solid waste industry, our issue and concern is that when they get tossed into, whether it's recycling or even into the garbage, and they get jostled around, they are more prone to start fires. And so really making sure that, or trying to, that these are handled as properly as possible to go to a recycling place, or again, so that even the devices that they are in, if you can't get the battery out, and you have more maybe questions, I can maybe answer this after, address this after, and go through some other things here, but these are becoming more of a concern just because of the fire hazard that they may cause. So in Wisconsin, we also have an electronics recycling law. And electronics are items that probably you possibly have some kind of different kind of circuit boards or other kinds of that kind of monitor, maybe a glass screen. So like TVs and computer screens, et cetera, phone devices, tablets. Those are some of the electronics that are not allowed in our landfills and need to go to a special recycling system or program. So again, not in your curbside, but again, there's many options for these. Again, retail stores, certain places, again, Staples, Best Buy, there are a number of places that will take them. And again, the 2 different solid waste departments. So here, these are just some examples: cell phones, little devices, laptops, computer components, keyboards, the mice, all these different items related to the computer parts all need to be stay out of our landfill and go to proper recycling. They have a lot of different heavy metals, and so these are things that we don't want in our landfills and into our environment to potentially, contaminate more things. So these are, I have another special item that is possible sometimes for recycling. And these are these bulky kind of items, and such as plastic outdoor lawn furniture and or odd shape like 5-gallon buckets. But these, the only location at this time in our area in central Wisconsin that will take these kind of items because of their size for recycling is where you bring them yourself to the Portage County Material Recovery Facility in Plover. So if you want to do that, they do accept them through that process of where you directly bring them and you end up putting them in one of their kind of like large dumpster type things for until they can actually bale all of those just themselves. Again, we don't want these kind of things trying to go across the line, but if you are willing and wanting to take them to the Portage County MRF in Plover, you can do that. Otherwise, they're just garbage. They just go into your trash if you cannot reuse them. So possible to recycle these odd-sized rigid plastics, but not always that common. So again, not in the curbside, check for different options and see what might be available. But if you can't find something, it would be garbage, all right? So there are a couple of other items that I'd like to talk about that really aren't recycling as such, but it's an opportunity to just tell you to not put them in your recycling and to handle these more properly other ways. If you have anyone, like say in your household, that is using syringes for medication, it's becoming much more common to take different kind of medications with a syringe. We really ask people to collect those, save those sharps, as we call them, between the syringe and the lancets, for example, to save them and put them in a proper container. This is an actual commercial type container, but you can use a heavy detergent bottle, and then that is write the words sharps on it and find your local programs. There are a number of pharmacies throughout central Wisconsin that take them. And also, again, the 2 different solid waste departments will take them. So looking on either on their websites or calling our number, we can give you information about where to take them. But for the safety of our workers, whether it's at the recycling center or at the landfill, et cetera, the haulers, all involved, and just general public health, that these things aren't floating around, we really ask people to be very careful and save their sharps in a proper container and bring it to one of the places that will dispose of those properly. So it's a special process to dispose of them. They're not as such recycled, but we really also don't want them in our just general waste as well. Another category that's a little different are our medications. And again, this too, we prefer, we ask people to save and collect these in their own special way. Pills, now the locations that you can bring these to are typically at police departments. That's for safety and security reasons. And again, you can learn more about what places accept those and what times, et cetera, from either our websites or calling. But typically now, the tablets, you can just put them in a Ziploc bag. You don't need to keep them in this individual little containers anymore, and just gather them all together and then bring them to one of those locations so that those also are disposed of properly. And again, that saves or helps our community health, our environmental health, and keeps these out of our wastewater treatments and out of our homes so that others may not get into them or abuse and or get ill by those. So these are things that just don't fall into the other ones, but I do want to share that we also don't want these in either the recycling stream or even the garbage stream, preferably. All right, so let's get a little plug on those. Now, so these have options. I'm going to now go over some things that perhaps you were like, oh, I thought that was recyclable. Oh, I was hoping it was recyclable. You mean really it isn't recyclable? I'm going to go over those. All right. So I mentioned the aluminum foil. Yes, aluminum foil is not really recyclable. You hear the word aluminum and you think, oh, isn't it just like aluminum can? But really, no, it is a very low grade, very thin level. It's kind of barely aluminum. And so really we can't take this for recycling. This just should be garbage. These days with COVID, please do not put any masks in with your recyclables. They just go into your garbage, all right? This is a clean one. I just wanted to use it for demonstration, all right? Odds and ends, things like mirrors and ceramics, you know, sometimes people think, well, it's glass, kind of, isn't it? Can I put that in with recycling? And again, no, we just will take the bottle glass and jars, et cetera. So no bottles or ceramics or mirrors, pottery, et cetera, like that. So something else. Now, maybe Susan, if you could take some questions, why do you think maybe these would not be acceptable? I'm just wondering if anybody has some ideas. Even though they're plastic and maybe even they say they're recyclable, anyone have any thoughts? If you were catching on what I was talking about a little bit earlier in the thing about, I don't know. So I'm going to just give a second here and see if Susan has any, anybody has any ideas.
It's too small, not number 1 or 2 resin.
There, too small. Thank you. That was the big thing. These little K-cups, a lot of times they'll say they're recyclable. And maybe in a certain world or situation, but really not commonly, very, very rare. And so it would take a very special facility that would handle something like these small kinds of K-cups type things. So just, again, just these things are just too small, no matter what resin they are. All right. The other thing that we, you have to check, but there are not currently many places for recycling of like pottery, I'm sorry, garden plant type stuff. There's different places that will reuse them. So that is always a possibility of reusing your different garden pottery or, you know, planter type things that you get. But generally, if at some point you collect too many and can't find somebody to reuse it, then it's just going to become garbage. Whoops, wrapping paper and bows. Again, please reuse them. But with the holidays coming, if it's metallic, shiny, glittery, all that, this kind of stuff would just be garbage. If it's just a kind of a regular paper feeling type of wrapping paper, then maybe that can be recycled. But again, if it's got glitter, metallic finish, then that is just garbage. Oh, here I had a plastic lid on as my sample, but again, if you could get this plastic lid into another container, it could maybe be recycled, but as is like this, no. Another thing we have is there are a number of items on here. We have styrofoam, we have a paper plate that, let's go with the idea that it was probably used. Right now it's clean, but we have silverware, some of these cups that various kind of plastic, straws, these kind of things are typically just garbage. If they've been used, consumed and all that, unless you really can know someplace definitely that will take them through a special program, let's say like maybe a composting perhaps, but you really need to know and assure that that event, for example, is really going to take them and recycle or compost them. By and large, just put these kind of items that, from your home into the garbage. So they are not recyclable or, even, compostable at our kind of facilities. I mean, that composting is a whole nother topic. We could talk about another time, but again, these are all considered garbage. These kind of things, plastic bags, this type. Now, when I talked about the real soft ones, those can go to different recycling. But when you look on some of these, they do sometimes have a little symbol here of how to recycle. And these kind of more crinkly ones are garbage. And so watch for that little symbol on there about how to recycle. This one has that recycling symbol with an X through it, basically telling you, please don't put it in with your other recycling. Like CDs, cases, if you can find a way to reuse them, but otherwise they're garbage. Styrofoam trays, again, garbage. And then something else that I also gotten questions about is the term electronics has become actually kind of confusing. So in good intention, people say, well, isn't this like an electronic? I plug it in, it's and this is like an electrical item, not an electronic item. So if you get something like this, let's say a toaster or something of this that just is kind of a kitchen type appliance, these things are not banned from the landfill. They can just go in the garbage. Or if it was something that was, let's just say you had like an old drill, a power drill that was just with a cord again, maybe that could go into scrap metal. But the idea is that it is not a required thing to be separated like the like computer components and those kind of electronics. So just because it has a plug and it plugs in and being electrical doesn't mean it has to be separated and go for recycling, all right? So I talked pretty fast here, I feel. I hope, went over a bunch of things, but now I really would like to open it up for different kinds of questions or clarifications about what I mentioned, and, kind of open it up for what has been really maybe kind of puzzling you about all this garbage and recycling.
Well, it's been lively in the chat. So for those of you who have not been following the chat, I'm going to give a little summary. First of all, I gave the connection to IRO in Mosinee, IROW. They're the ones that take those hard-covered books. They also take shredded documents and sensitive material for recycling. There's a link there for you. Reiterating, do not plastic bag your recyclables. Plastic bags do not go in your curbside bin. Please take those to your local grocery store. Target's been very consistent in accepting these. Walmart's have been very consistent in accepting these. And a lot of local grocery stores do. Not all are doing this. Not all of them have returned due to COVID, but many of them are accepting them. So check locally. Question about soft-sided books like telephone books and paperback. Karen, I said those are curbside, been accepted. Do you have additional advice on that one?
No, that is true. Yeah, soft covered, books can be in with your curbside. I probably would make one variation to that though. If you have very thick, soft covered book, but very thick, I can picture a dictionary that I have that's still soft covered, but very thick. I would maybe encourage you to try to just tear it, like split it in half or something, just so that it isn't quite so thick and that it might get confused again through the sorting system. But if it is, let's say 2 inches or so, an inch to 2 inch, that could just go as is.
Great. You addressed tinfoil. So tinfoil is a no. Aseptic containers, I think I was answering questions on that. So milk containers. Did you say anything on containers? I'm sorry.
No, I did not say anything about those. At this particular time in central Wisconsin, we don't have a system and a market to recycle those at this time. Mm-hmm. There are possible markets, but it just takes a different kind of system to separate that and get it to this particular market. So it's a little more problematic. And this just also demonstrates some of the challenges that recycling programs have, is that you have to, be able to collect it, somehow process, sort it, transport it to someplace else, and where that location is, and making sure that you can get it to that place well, or efficiently. So sometimes just knowing that there's something that exists isn't enough, and so at this time right now, those aseptic cartons, milk cartons and that are not being accepted for recycling, at least here in throughout central Wisconsin. So again, but we're hoping that we can maybe figure something out with that, but again, that at this time is not available.
And that's what I said. So keep an eye on that one, because in other communities not too far away, they do, but we don't have a way of sorting it. But that may change in a year or two. So make sure you're looking at those flyers that come to your house. There was someone that asked putting small bottles into larger containers, which you did address, making sure they're just likes with likes. There was a question on plastic bags, such as frozen food bags, pasta bags, and other stiffer type plastics. And I did reiterate that those are not recyclable typically. Often those have the symbol on there too, that's saying not for recycling on that. They do fall under that category, yeah.
I'm gonna walk up a little closer to that and show you let me know if you can see that okay. Oops.
And it's a little blurry, but yeah, I can kind of see that now. Hopefully others can. It's a little on the blurry side, but do follow those labels. Those are probably the best for them coming out of the manufacturing, and packaging companies are getting better using those symbols as more accurate information for recycling. Christmas lights. Oh, I did let people know about Christmas lights going to scrap metal. Okay, there's a lot. Just give me a second here. What happens to scrap when you take them, what happens to sharps when you take them to a pharmacy or vet? Do they actually get recycled, or are they put in the garbage?
Okay, I will address that one. The main concern with those is that they, the health side of that. And what is interesting is that they go to an autoclaving facility that basically is rendering them to be back to, let's say, sterile, or just, not infectious anymore. And then after that, then they go to a landfill. But that process is all very charted and, recorded, et cetera. And so that's what's going to happen to them. They don't get ever recycled, but they're managed in a way that, again, makes them not infectious, not, that, and then still just dispose of them. So, but that process of going through that is really important to assure the safety for, workers and the public.
Yep, thanks. Jody had a great addition to add on to your elastic masks for everybody. Just make sure you cut those just as a courtesy to our bird and wildlife, in case those masks do get out into the environment on the many different ways. If you just do a quick cut to those, that can ensure some safety for wildlife if they happen to fly out or get lost in the shuffle, let's say. Wrapping paper, there was some good conversation about that. Even the glossy, not only just metallic, but glossy wrapping paper is also not to be put in your recycling. Anything more on that? That's right? I mean, do you have anything more on wrapping paper? Try to find something with matte finish is what I recommended. Or, you know, others. You can, you know, there's other ways of doing wrapping paper, but
and
metal
just
lids.
wrapping, period.
Yeah, I know. What about the glossy boxes from some of the frozen foods? This is a good question. Do you know what they're referring to on those glossy boxes, frozen containers?
Yeah. Now, this would be a case where if it feels sort of like, glossy, smooth, somewhat like greasy, or not, waxy. Here to be a case of when in doubt, throw it out. It just, there are some, matter of fact, there are some programs even that won't take the, based on, again, their markets, but they won't take or accept like beer packing, like cartons or soda cartons, because the manufacturers to make those containers will add special chemicals to make them more of a wet strength kind of box or paper. And so that, depending on the market that's going to get that paper, they may have issues and not be able to break it down and with that kind of coating in a sense that it has. So our program, we can take those, but for those frozen food ones, especially if it is more in direct contact with the food, it's often going to be kind of a waxy coated thing. I'm thinking, for example, some like frozen fish sticks or something that I've gotten where the fish is like right next to the box. You can tell they put some kind of coating on it. But if it's just the outer shell and it's, doesn't have that feel, back to when in doubt, just throw that type of box away.
I agree. A lot of the frozen foods have a really bad cardboard. It's lined so many times that it almost becomes more of a contaminant anymore. Rule of thumb, throw those frozen boxes out. And that's what I know Amanda Huffley, the director at the MRF, would really say the same. The Portage County Solid Waste Department, would say the same on those. So moving along, books can always go into Little Free Libraries, another great place for reuse. I'd like to know what to do with paper, milk, cream, juice type cartons. Okay, those are our aseptic containers we're talking about. All of those containers are not acceptable in the curbside bin. Those go in your trash. So Susan, I hope we answered that question for you. This is a market to keep an eye on that could shift in the future. Right now in our communities, we are not accepting those milk cartons. Big picture. What happens when the MRF receives materials that are not recyclable? Do they end up getting landfilled, or worse, do they get damaged, slow down the processing, and end up wasting time and money? Also wondering about the percentage of materials you receive at the MRF that end up going to the landfill. Great question, Karen.
Okay, so that's back to why we're trying to do this, reduce the contamination, because just as the person mentioned, actually, if you think about it, it's garbage, it's essentially garbage, and it gets collected in with the recyclables. It goes through that whole sorting system, and maybe it's getting caught or damaging the equipment. They somehow have to get that out. They are really trying to not let that go through and get baled with all the good stuff, because if it gets in there, the market that takes that, we're going to probably ding their price and say no, or maybe refuse to even take it if they see too much contamination in it. So again, that stuff is garbage. It just traveled more than it ever needed to, because it went through a whole recycling thing and then it still ends up going to a landfill at the end. So typically though, let's say here again, Portage County's facility that services this area, the contamination rate that they have may be anywhere from 7 to 12%. So it's a really small amount. I know they have a particular in their agreement with the operator that there should be no more than 10%. So that is something that most facilities are really trying to keep low in the first place, but they also really want to, again, have a quality product going out in those bales. So we can do our part to help both the whole process, not haul this stuff all over the place and then have it only to go back to a landfill. And so that's what we're trying to educate folks about, what to put into bin and what not to put into the bin.
Oh, there's so many. This is so exciting. Okay, so this is being recorded. Jody asked about fabric. That's a really good question. Fabric is a good question. So Karen, I'm gonna let you address that one.
Okay, so fabric, not in your bin. Let's go with that first. And so textiles, recycling. Fabric, if you can somehow, again, reuse it and all that, that's great. Goodwill stores do tend to recycle materials, textiles that are not saleable. So let's say, you could put your let's say stained t-shirts or jeans in one bag, and a plastic bag or something, when you take it there and just state that this is for recycling, not for resale, and talk with the attendant to make sure that they know that. And they have, I believe Susan had kind of witnessed some of this, the way that they will recycle this. So recycling textiles is not impossible. It's just a little more, let's say, limited in some ways. And we don't just have places very commonly around where you can just bring this on your own, perhaps other than, let's say, a Goodwill. So it's possible, but just not necessarily all that common. Basically, again, don't put it in your curbside for sure. You can, put that stuff in your garbage. But that's only after too, when it really gets to a point where you can't use or wear these things. Again, I'm a notorious resale shopper. So, that a lot of that stuff, just because you don't need or want it, doesn't mean somebody might not like it. So I kind of answer that question. And Susan, if you want to add anything more about your experience.
Yeah, I agree. So it definitely doesn't go in that curbside, but many places do accept it. I think you answered it very thoroughly. So
okay.
Goodwill, Goodwill really is a good option. They're the ones that will sort those markets for you. So yeah. There's a question about the plastic pump bottles. Can the pump be recycled with the bottle? They have some little metal springs inside that's tough to remove. So thoughts on that?
Sure. It's more plastic than metal, basically. Think of it that way. So that pump can stay with the plastic bottle. Again, if it's a plastic pump with a plastic bottle, it can stay together, and then that all would get recycled.
Okay. Do we need to remove paper labels from recycled plastic bags like Amazon and USPS shipping bags?
Oh, to recycle the plastic film bags, do you need to remove the labels?
Yeah, these are your shipping bags, like your Amazon and the U.S. Postal Service bags. Are those even accepted for recycling one way or another?
Well, I think it's maybe a little bit of a judgment. I do get some things that have a big mailing label on that plastic film. I mean, if it's almost like half of the image, I tend to just cut it off and toss that and put the rest with my other kind of plastic bags. Okay. It really kind of goes like this almost for, let's say, cardboard as well. If the good part is gunked up, almost more tape and labels than the part you want to actually recycle, then that may be just something to just put in the garbage. I mean, the whole thing, because, or try to get that off, because again, what is the objective? You want to be able to recycle, let's say, that plastic film from the bag, then, you know, you want more film than all this other stuff attached to it. So it's a little fine line, but, you know, again, back to when in doubt, throw it out.
Yeah, often I'm throwing those out. Another thing to add on those, take receipts out of your plastic bags. They, Trex Recycling doesn't want paper. That's in their plastic. So make sure you don't have, you're just, you know, removing those. And receipts all need to be put in the trash. They are not recyclable. So receipts are to be put in the trash can. So. All right, I have been looking for a way not to landfill old pillows. Not to, do we have any suggestions for that? Yep, sorry.
Otherwise, maybe checking with like Humane Society, just to see if they would use them for, you know, pets to, you know, lay on or play with and all that. But eventually it's going to be garbage.
Yep. And that is bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is part of the Trex Recycling, so I let folks know about that one. If your question was not answered, maybe I missed it because I have had a very long thread of our group chat. Please let me know or send that question there. If you would like to ask a question verbally, you're welcome to unmute yourself or let me know and I can help unmute yourself. Oh yeah, screwed on bottle tops. So bottle caps. Someone had a question on bottle caps. Thank you, Karen. I overlooked that one.
Oh, okay. Now those, boy, you can make all kinds of maybe crafts with them, but if otherwise collect them in a steel, excuse me, a steel food can, maybe the kind that you didn't take the lid off completely. So it's got a little kind of cover so you can kind of push it down in and then kind of crimp it so that they don't fall out. At the same time, because that steel is separated by a magnet across a sorting line, I would suggest more smaller cans than like one bigger one really full and heavy of bottle caps. So, you know, think of it, it's like if it, well, I got like, you know, a whole pound of bottle caps here, I would suggest, you know, spreading them out into other cans. But they're metal, they could definitely get recycled with that steel can if they stay in and with that can when it gets pulled up to be sorted out.
Yep, that's what I do with mine. I collect maybe a quarter. I make sure I'm not filling the can more than a quarter or a half at most with my bottle caps. And then the bottle caps are getting put into my tin cans for that. So yep, that's exactly what I do too. Great questions.
May I ask a question?
Of course. What question do you have there?
It's my husband who would like to ask it.
Okay.
What about photographs and photograph film negatives?
Oh,
Those would be garbage. So yeah, that they're not recyclable as that.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. It is 7:56. If anyone has, excuse me, any remaining questions, Karen and I will stay online. Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for joining today. I did notice, if you are from the town of Weston, I do want to let you know that they're launching an America Recycles Day event just for their residents where you can send in a picture of your recycle bin. And it will, once you send that in, you're entered to win some prizes. So a drawing for a $25 gift card or a flat screen TV. So giveaways. So a town of Weston folks, you have a chance to win on that one. So this program has been recorded. You all will get a follow-up email about that link when it is posted in case you want to share this with your friends. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Happy America Recycles Day, and thank you for recycling right.